Command F is my savior. I just ended this chapter like, ugh.
Okay, so I've got a good chunk done.
Oh my god, that is a big spider. Guitar randomly? I'm so proud of it. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Here I make all types of content about my work in progresses and how they're going, and I'm going to be querying soon, so stick around. Today's video is all about copy editing, specifically what I cut from my book and why. Today's video is about killing your darlings. Let me know what stage of the editing process you're in, and without further ado, let's get on to the video. So first, what is copy editing? This is a pretty important thing to know. Unlike line editing, when you make sentence changes and structural changes to your draft, copy editing is when you replace words. So you're working on the word level, changing words for stronger ones, and removing the ones that you use too often. So that's what this video is about. It's about those removing of those words, which words they are and why I did them. I was surprised by some of these and also how hard it was to cut for others. Some words that I thought were going to be an issue were not an issue at all. Also, keep the new background. If you were following my Instagram or you've seen my live streams recently, you would have seen this background before, but this tapestry is to represent my work in progress, Seaside. If you want to learn more about that, I will put its playlist in the description. You probably want to check out one of the later draft vlogs. You can get an up-to-date video style from me, but anyway, let's find out how ruthless I was with my draft. If I got my math wrong, I'm sorry. I am not studying math. I'm studying information science, so that is why we're doing a little data deep dive, but I cannot promise the validity of all of these numbers. I researched which words to cut from my manuscript from a variety of sources, from people on AuthorTube to research articles to words that just felt like, ooh, that's a lot. But anyway, let's start off with the most persistent offender was. This word's very common. It's also very much associated with passive voice, which is not great. In total, before copy editing, there were 1,389 instances of was in my book. And to get these numbers, I looked in Scrivener and then I went to my statistics and I asked it to calculate the actual word counts for each of these words. It's a very useful tool if you haven't tried it already. So was a minute to take from 1,389 to 1,277, so that's a total of 112 cut from was. I really tried with every instance, but I just could not get rid of any more because sometimes telling is necessary. You know, you don't need to have an action for each sentence in the book, and also if you were describing a action that is in progress or has just started and isn't going to complete soon, you can use was as in like was running or was starting, but try not to use so many of those. Passive voice is when no subject is doing the action of a sentence. So you can say the house was built, but we don't know who built the house. The house is just built. If you want to make that active voice, you would say she built the house, and that changes the verb from was to built, which is active. Anyway, I cut 112 instances of was from my manuscript. Another big one is that. I had 522 and I cut it to 416, meaning this number was cut. That is a word that you might use too often in a sentence, especially when it's in the middle connecting two parts of a sentence. And that was when I focused on cutting it the most. But when that is referencing something that was either earlier in the sentence or in another sentence, then you can't really get rid of it. So I was only able to cut about 100 from that, but that's okay. Next, we're going to go over all the words that I cut exactly 77 from. The first one is there. I took this from 154 to 77, cut 77 of them. You don't need there most of the time, as it's obvious that I was able to cut half of them. Looked, which is a filter verb, and you want to be careful about filter verbs because it removes the perspective from deep in the protagonist's head Does that make sense? So basically when you write third person, as my book is in, you want the perspective to be as close to the character's inner thoughts as possible. Usually, it depends on what kind of scene you're writing or where the tension is in the scene. But when you are right in the character's head, you don't want to use looked because that is a filter word and it takes the reader like a step removed from the character. So you might say Luca looked at the sky, or you could say the sky was blue or the sky darkened. Just by mentioning the sky means that Luca is looking at it. So that's how you deal with filter verbs, although they can't be gotten rid of all the time. Just cut where it makes sense. Another verb I cut a lot of is turned, but I also came into the issue that there aren't a lot of good synonyms for turned, like he turned to the window or he turned away. Like you could use like whirled, but that's just so extra. I cut this one from 101 to 63, and that's like 40-ish cuts. Saw was actually at only 36 instances for me, so I didn't really cut it for my manuscript. There were a few words like this that I thought I would have a problem with, but I just didn't. Another one is something. I didn't really have it that many times in my draft, so I moved on. Slightly, only had like 3 of these, didn't cut any. Seemed as well, only cut a little bit. I didn't really use this word that much. Forgot and get, I cut about 20 words from each of those categories. Up, on, and down, lots of cuts were made for these words. You want to avoid prepositions when they are unnecessary, like for example, he stood up. Well, you don't need the up, right? You can just say he stood, or he sat down. Like, you don't need the down. We know what motion is implied by sitting. So that's where you can cut these kinds of prepositions that you don't need. Away, I use this word a lot. I had 122 of them and I cut it down to 94, which is like 24 cut. Smiled and smile were cut down just a little bit. You don't want anyone to have blank faces all the time, but also you don't want them to smile too much. I know there are other crutch expressions that I rely on. Smiled is one, laughed is one, swallowed is one, like as like a pause. I need to work on that. Think and wanted, I did minimal cuts for these, and this is because the word think was used mostly in natural dialogue, so I didn't cut much of it. It just, needed to be as it was. I'm just realizing now that this is past tense and I would have used the word thought for think. Okay, so maybe I need to go back and look at the word thought later. For wanted, I only cut 6 of these, and I think I actually did a pretty good job at cutting this filter word from my character's internal monologues. So I think I did a pretty good job at that before I started copy editing. Then cut 17 of them, necessary, but not show-stopping. Just, we will get to this, it's mostly used for emphasis and also in character speech, like I just want to do this. Like, I was shocked in my manuscript because I thought I was going to have 500 by the amount of times it's said in my head and in my speech, but I actually only had 122 of these, so I cut it down to 94, which is like 32. So not too bad, and not too overused, in my opinion. For really, I cut like about 30 of them. When you have an adjective and you might say like really adjective, like that's not super good. You can just use a stronger adjective. But when you use it for emphasis, like what he really wanted, that's when it was necessary. Otherwise, I cut it. I had 424 of these and I cut it down to 400. So not great, but I also, it's not just like in a sentence. Like is a simile word, so you need that if you're gonna make like imagery and metaphors. And also if a character is making an assumption, like it looked like he was doing this, or like I keep saying like I didn't cut that many more for my draft, but it needed to be done. So quicker with this. Even, now, some, almost. I realized I have a strong tendency to use now to start a thought, especially in Luca's perspective. Seaside is dual/try perspective. In order to get Luca's voice right, I use now a lot because he's always thinking back and forth between what happened in the summer and what is happening now in the winter. I did some cuts on it because it needed to be done. But I do like using the word now. Nice. For some reason I had a lot of nice, so I cut 10 of those. Still, just cut 10. These are just for flavor really, and I didn't have that many in the first place, so they're staying. Feeling, another filter verb, or can just describe like feelings, like romantic crushed feelings, so that stayed in. New, another filter verb. I didn't have that many to begin with, so I cut about 10. I think the number is 11. And that needed to be done. Always, I love the word always in my drift, but I did make the cut. I did make the sacrifice. I would use always as in like, he always knew that he would always love. Like I don't need it twice in a sentence. So there were a lot of times like that. I was like, okay, this just isn't necessary. Let's cut it. And my last word to talk about is else. Mostly this was intended with what else, like what else could he do? What else did he need? Was there something else he could do? Stuff like that. 11 words decreased by like a fourth, so that was pretty good. Command F is my savior. Yeah, so basically that was all the words that I cut from my manuscript that I kept track of. In total, I cut 1,024 words, which is a nice square number. I do have to confess that I did try to make a visualization of all of these words and how I cut them. I tried making an Excel spreadsheet of like a 32 by 32 box, and I realized quickly how long that was going to take for me to fill in each box for each of these words, but I did want to do it. I wanted to show some other way of everything I did besides a pie chart, but yeah, I didn't make a pie chart either, so I'm sorry, but I did cut 1,024 words, and I might have some more data here for you, like about filter words and flavor words and etc. Here they are if I did that. So what are my takeaways from copy editing? I do have to say pleasantly that when I was doing this copy edit, it felt very satisfying to get to take away these words, like just get them out of there. I felt like I was just like sweeping it and like cleaning it, and it felt very satisfying. I was also surprisingly finding a lot of typos as I was doing it, because I would be reading the sentence that the word was in before cutting it, and I would find typos in that sentence and be like, ooh, there's one. That's one less I'm gonna find later. I also realized that I don't have to put a comma before the word to. Like, I am released from this torment. I thought it was a hard and fast grammar rule. I hate it. Like, why do I have to do this? And then I looked it up and I realized I didn't have to do it. And I was like, yes. End this tyranny. I was also able to use Command F to search for 2 spaces at the end of a sentence instead of 1 space. I did do that sometimes on accident. Also able to find spaces at the end of paragraphs. Got to delete those. That was good. I reformatted my times. They were looking real ugly. I also made the decision to change all my numbers from numerals into words, because it just looked weird having some numbers below 10 as words and above 10 as numbers. So I just changed everything under 100 to a word. And there's only one like 300 in my book that is a 300. And of course the numbers are used for times, but like that's all numbers. Oh, info numbers, but that's all they're used for. So what have I learned from this process? Command F is your friend. It is your bestie. Get used to using her and thank her for her service, because she will do so much for you. I also learned that there's no excuse not to check those tiny words, because there is always something to cut. Even if you feel like your manuscript is like perfect, polished, it's at the word count you want, you can always cut something. And a shorter manuscript overall is not a bad thing. If anything, it's in your favor if you are going to be querying soon like I am. And so in total, I was able to cut 1,000 words from my draft. That I kept track of. My manuscript is currently at 82,048 words, which is perfectly fine and good. I am in the middle of a proofread right now, so like getting even closer to the finish line with querying. Let me know what crutch words that you found if you've done any copy edits before, or words you're dreading to cut once you get to that editing stage. I definitely think my crutch words that I cut in line edits, not so much copy edits, were now, there, then, and was, especially with passive voice. I'm so glad I was able to cut even more of those in copy edits. It was very satisfying and good, and I'm pleased how the draft is coming along. Thank you guys so much for watching this data-driven video. It was really satisfying for me to total up all the words that I cut for my manuscript and like It's so satisfying. And let me know what you cut from your manuscript. As I said earlier, soon I will be querying Seaside as soon as time allows. I am currently in grad school, so I have school to do and I have a job to do. So, you know, it'll come when it comes, but it's closer every day, and I thank you for your patience. Subscribe to this channel so you can find out when it happens, and I also post on my community tab updates on how my editing is going. You can follow my Instagram for writing reels and other kinds of story content. I will put that link in the description. Oh, I'm also doing regular live streams now, Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have a lot of fun there. Thank you to everyone who's shown up and interacted with me in the comments. It's very fun and it's a good time. Thank you guys for being there, and thank you for watching this video. I'd appreciate if you liked this video, if you liked it, for more data-driven videos. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!